Hello and welcome back to the Coptic lesson number 5. Um, so just before we get started, we'll go ahead and begin with a prayer. Let's say together, جيبنيوت اتخني في قوي معرف توفو نجي فكران معرس إي إنجتك مدهورو معرف شوبي إما فريتي خانت فاه نمهي جنبي كاهي بن أويك انترستي ميف نانم فوو وو كان يتيرو نانيفول إما فريتي هون انتن كو إيفول إني أتاء هون انتان أو وو إمبير انتن أخون إبيرازموس الله نحمين إيفول هذا كتهو فند خريستوس يسوس بن شويس جتوك تات متورو ننتيجوم نبيو شاينة انتنينة تيرامين هنفرانا مبيوت نمبشيري نبقلم ثواب. Okay, so welcome back, and again we'll just continue going through the Liturgy of St Basil and just kind of analyzing the grammar as best as we can and going through some translations and going from there. Let's go at it. Okay. So last time we left off on Faipech and Umithmi Amin. Go to the next part. So this is the priest's next response now, P-O-Weeb, the priest. And we start off with Pairation P-Ke Achot. Let's just take it part by part. So Pairation, this is the demonstrative pronoun. And riti means like a condition or manner. So pairation means this condition or this manner or this way. Or in other words, that's what we say likewise. On means also. So this way also. Or in other words, likewise also. Some people say that in Arabic, when they say bardu, something like that, bardu, it's actually from pairation, but is being pronounced very quickly and in kind of the original kind of pronunciation. So, whether that's true or not, I don't know for sure. But whenever you hear people saying in Arabic, "Keda bardo" or "bardo," stuff like that, it's from pairation. So, likewise, also, P, K, afot. So afot, is just a noun, means like a cup or chalice. P is the definite article. So what does ke mean? Ke has different types of meanings. In most books, you'll see it translated as other. But something you won't see in textbooks is it also means also. So you can see in an instance like this why it doesn't mean other, because you say likewise also the other cup. It obviously does not mean other. But we have pairation, so likewise also the cup also. Pi ke afot. So in that sense, it's kind of putting an emphasis on so the cup also. So likewise also the cup. Okay, so ke, like I said, in general, in most textbooks, you'll see that they only translate it as other. The other thing you'll see too is usually ke is when it's prefixed to some sort of noun, in this case, afot. Sometimes you'll have ke, but not prefixed to a noun, but prefixed to pronouns. So for example, what do I mean by that? P, ket, T, keti, ni, ke, kouni. It's so correct. Kouni. So P ket, it just means the other. It's masculine. T keti means like the other one, feminine. And ni kekuni means the other ones, plural. And we know that from like the Gregorian liturgy where one says ni kekauni. I'm trying to remember exactly which part, but it's at one point after the commemoration in the liturgy of St. Gregory. Ori if mevi choice in ni kekauni. I think it's, I remember off the top of my head, Ori if mevi. Choice and ni ke kauni etan po mevi and pistol. So I think that's the liner. So if we're gonna take this ari if mevi, so remember make the thought, we've talked about that before, or in other words remember. If choice, remember O Lord, remember it's the vocative, even though I've got the definite article here. Remember O Lord, en ni kekaun. This is just the particle here. Ni, the plural definite article, and then kekaun, the others. So it's not like in the what we have here, where we have ke afot, where we're talking about a cup. Others. It doesn't say whether it's other things or other people or other animals or other cups or other books. We don't know. It's the others, but instead of a noun, it just has a pronoun, a plural pronoun suffix. So it's the other things. We don't know what those things are. So remember, O Lord, the others, which which we make their thought. In other words, remember, O Lord, the others which we remembered, and pistos, the faithful. Okay, so remember, O Lord, the others, the other faithful which we remembered. Okay, so that's what piket, tiketi, and ni kekauni. Okay, but those are, again, if it doesn't have these kind of pronoun suffixes, then we have just ke with a noun, means other or also or emphasizing. Okay, so pairiti on, likewise also, the cup also, so again it's like duplicated also, essentially. Minensa, remember it just means after. And then so what? After what? P. And dipnon. Dipnon is a Greek word meaning dinner or supper. So after the supper. So likewise also, the cup also after the supper of thot. Thot. So thot is to mix. Of is a simple past tense. So he mixed with this suffix pronoun masculine. So he mixed it. What was it that he mixed that's masculine? Pkefot. Because it's masculine, it corresponds to that. So he mixed it. Ivulchen is a preposition meaning from in or from among, or basically mixed it with. Mixed it with what? Ir nem ma'u. So ir means wine with indefinite article. So just with, you'd say like a wine, or you don't say a wine, but you just say with wine. And water, but you don't really say oh water, just you say water. So he mixed him, the him being the cup, from or with or by a wine and a water. So he mixed it with wine and water. Okay, so taking it all together. Likewise also, the cup also, after the supper or after the dinner, he mixed it, he mixed him with, or the him being the cup, he mixed it with wine and water. And then this is people call it like the temporal, and it can also be like the relative with the simple past. It just depends on the context. So remember, you don't want to get confused if this is the temporal or the relative of the past. So the relative of the past would be which he thanks, but that doesn't make sense. So we know it's the temporal, when he gave thanks. So the temporal, I think we talked about it before, but just in case we didn't, so it's going to go reply. Efar. Efar. Efas. Efan. Efaretin. Efav. Okay, so this is the temporal, and it means like when something happened. So when I walked, when I ate, or etc. So here it's when he shif ehmos. Remember we talked about that means to receive grace, or in other words, when you receive grace from somebody, you give them thanks. So we simply translate it as when we give thanks, or when he gave thanks. But it's actually kind of like received grace. When people say Amin, when he gave thanks, af ismo eruv. So past tense, af, he, ismo means to bless or praise something. So ismo, the direct object of ismo usually has the form of the direct object with the E form. The direct object being the object that directly receives the verb instead of the direct object with the may, like immuf. It wouldn't be af ismo immuf, no, it's af ismo eruv. So remember we talked about like the verbs of perception, the verbs of the senses, etc. But also ismo is one of those verbs that uses the E form of the direct object. So af ismo eruv. He blessed it. So it being the cup, because remember it's this masculine, singular masculine item, which is what? It's the cup that we've been talking about. So back up here. So he gave thanks. When he gave thanks, he blessed it. Then af agiazinem. I think we talked about that a little bit last time. So af, past tense. Is the pre-nominal form of iri, to do or to make or to become. So he made. Agiazin comes from ageia or agios, means holy. So he made holy immof. What's the direct object of immof? It's masculine. And again, it's immof instead of erof because, again, it's not one of those types of verbs that we talked about, the verbs of perception, the verbs of senses, or ismo, for example. So we're going to have the direct object of the regular standard form of M. So he made holy him. So he made it holy. Or what does that mean? And when we want to translate it to something to be logical in English, he sanctified it. To sanctify means to make holy. So he sanctified it, or in other words, he made it holy. And then people say again, Amen. And then we have the Greek here. Ke in Greek means and. Pauline means again. Pistev omen, so it comes from pistos, meaning faith. And the suffix omen means we. So we believe or we have faith. Ke and. Homologo, like homologeia, is confess. And again, omen means we. So we confess, we believe, we confess. Ke and doxa, like doxa, sikireia, glory. And glory, and then again, omen, the suffix is we. So we believe, or we believe, or we have faith. We confess, and we glorify. So again, I don't really know the exact details of these big things. I just know these basics, so I can share those with you. But again, I believe there should be a Greek course. I'm not sure if that's taking place or not, but hopefully it'll be part of the software. Okay. Off gem TP. So past tense, simple past. Off he, and then gem TP. Gem TP means to find flavor, or in other words, to taste. Gem is from genie, meaning to find, and TP means taste or flavor. So he found taste, or he tasted it. Or not, he doesn't even say tasted it, it just says he tasted. He tasted. Of gem TP, he tasted. Because there's no direct object here, there's no immo. So it just says he tasted without a direct object. So in other words, like, he took a sip or something, he tasted it. Of tief on, so on means also. Of is the past tense. And then tief, this is the pre-pronominal. Pronominal means pronoun because we have a pronoun here. So pre-pronominal form of the verb t. T means to give. So remember, we went through those conjugations before. So he gave him. But what's the him? Again, it's pike effort, the cup. Again, it's still that masculine thing that he gave. So he tasted it, or basically he took a sip, and he gave him. He gave it also. So who did he give it to? So we have the direct object here with the linking particle. He gave it to me, ete. So that's the further demonstrative. So it means those. The further, it's a plural things which are further away. Ni, as opposed to nigh, which would be the nearer things, nigh. But this is ni, so it's the further things. So it's those as opposed to these. So those, ete, which is a relative. Nuf, remember Nuf? We talked about those possessives, those which belong to him. So those which belong to him. Okay, remember, because we went through all those. So let's go back to our tables back here. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Okay, so we went through this. So teeth, of teeth, remember, comes from the verb t. So if we're going to go through the standard conjugations, it would be teeth, teeth, teeth. You never see those forms anyway, by the way. You're going to see teeth, of teeth, of teeth. You'll see teethen. You don't really see teeth, but you can, and you're going to see tito. Okay, so we just went through all of those. The other thing I was going to show you, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so we talked about nuf. Remember this conjugation pattern? So we talked about fa, tha, and na. Those are the possessive pronouns. I think hopefully I'm not mixing that up. I'm not getting confused, but I think it's called possessive pronouns. So foi, this is the singular masculine. So foi, fo, fos, fon, foten, fo. So belongs to me, belongs to you feminine, etc. The feminine form is exactly the same, so if you switch the phi to a theta. Exact same spelling otherwise. So that means the thing that belongs to me is masculine. Or if it's a theta, the thing that belongs to me is a feminine. Or if it's more than one thing that belongs to me, then it's this plural. Okay, so nun. Okay, but here, in this case that we were studying, it has nuf, right? So let's go back over here. Niete nuf. So it means the plural things, or the things which belong to him. What the things are, whether it's people, person, place, things, we don't know. It's those plurals that belong to him. So what are those plurals that belong to him? So those which plurals belong to him in agios, so they're holy, in mathitis, disciples, right? So those plural things that belong to him are the holy disciples, okay? So in general, we translate it as, he tasted. Again, there's no direct object of what he tasted, but we know he tasted the cup because we're just talking about it, right? So he tasted, he gave it also, because remember also probably because he gave them the body earlier. So now we're talking about also because he gave them the cup also. So he gave it also to those which they are his, or they belong to him, holy disciples. So he gave it to his holy disciples. Owo, and apostles, which are pure or holy. So apostles, eth-oeb, which are pure or holy. Or in other words, saintly apostles or holy apostles. So he gave it to his holy disciples, and I think in the transition says he gave it to his holy disciples and saintly apostles. Okay? But basically, you've got the equivalent of agios in Greek with eth-oeb in Coptic. So it's basically the equivalent words, but in English, just so it doesn't sound too redundant, we say his holy disciples and saintly apostles. But essentially they mean the same thing, just one's Coptic, one's Greek, but you have different nouns, apostolos and mathitis. So mathitis again disciples, and apostolos is apostles. Then you have the present continuous, if goemos. So he gave it to those which are his, dot, 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 dot. He saying, remember, because when we have the present continuous, you're going to take whatever this verb is and basically add ing to it. So go is to say. So he saying emos, the direct object. So he's saying it. Je, remember je is going to be basically like the quotation marks. So we can start the quotation. If goemos je, Chi. Chi is to take, the verb to take. But when it's just said in isolation like this, it's the imperative, so it's take. So means to drink. So take, drink. Again, it's two imperatives followed by each other. Because whenever you have the verb in isolation, without any kind of prefix, like ai-chi or af-chi or an-chi or ansu or aratinsu or anything like that, those are going to have tenses. When they don't have any prefix, it's going to be the imperative, a commandment form. So he's telling his disciples, those which are his saintly, holy apostles and saintly disciples, or holy disciples and saintly apostles, saying, because remember, he saying it, so saying. So he gave it to them basically while saying. So you can imagine he's handing it to them, saying, take, so, drink, evol enchit, from, remember enchit comes from, it's the preposition from chen, but it's the form of the preposition with, again, this fi, again, the third person singular masculine, referring to the cup, the chalice that we talked about. So take, drink from, in it, or in him, tiro. So remember, tiro, we talked about it before, even though tiro is going to be the second person and third person plural. But in this case, because we know of the context of the situation, we know it's talking about the second person. So take, drink from it, all of you. Not take, drink from it, all of them. Remember when we went back to our tables here? Let's see. I know we talked about it recently. Let's see if I'm going in the right direction here. Probably not. I'm going to go back another way. Too many spelling errors. Obviously, because Microsoft Word doesn't know Coptic. Let's see. I think it's this direction here somewhere. Yeah. So remember, tir means all, right? So again, you're not going to see all of these things, but you're going to see tirf and tirs, tiren, and you're going to see tiro. You don't ever really come across person singulars. So these two, I can't think of any instance where I've ever come across these, but I included them here just to see the conjugation patterns. So you'll never come across those ones that are highlighted now. But you will, on a regular basis, come across all the plurals and the third persons. And then remember we talked about it's kind of weird because the second and third person plural are identical. Tiro and tiro. So how do you know the difference? You just have to know from context. So going back over here, so you can know it's going to be take, drink from it, all of them. It's going to be all of them? No. All of you, because he's talking to his disciples. So it's going to be all of you, plural, right? So that's how we know. Phai ghar, remember ghar is the Greek particle just meaning for. So phai, this is the near demonstrative pronoun. So phai, that means this. And then pe basically means like is. So this is. For this is. Then you got the possessive adjective, my, that's a masculine. Snof, snof means blood. For this is my blood. Inte, of. Ti, diatheke. Diatheke is a Greek word meaning covenant or promise. So the covenant or the promise, and veri. Veri means new. So again, this is the adjective. So of the new covenant. And also diatheke, that's how you describe the testaments too. So ti diatheke and apos, or ti diatheke and veri. Apos means old, so the Old Testament is called ti diatheke and apos. The New Testament is called ti diatheke and veri. So this is my blood of the new covenant, of the New Testament, of the new promise. And again, the adjectives. Most adjectives follow the noun. So in this case, the adjective new follows the noun. Some adjectives are preceding the noun, but those are less common, but there are some notable ones, and we'll see as we go through. So in this case, the adjective very is new, and it follows the noun. So ti diatheke and very. So which ti diatheke and very? The diatheke and very, that which. So this is not the temporal. Remember, we just went through the temporal down here somewhere. But it's the relative of the present tense. So the new covenant, which, this is the etu, the third person plural. And actually, it's the future. Excuse me. The simple, the relative of the future tense, not the relative of the present tense. Which they will. Fon means to spill, but fonf is the pre-pronominal, because they're pronominal pronoun, so pre-pronoun, pre-pronominal. So which they will spill it or shed it. And again, who's the they? There's no they. Because we're not talking about soldiers or Jews. We know that, we understand that, but in the literary sense, in the written here, there's no they that we're talking about in particular. And when we know, because we know the whole context of the crucifixion, etc. But in this sense, it's actually the passive voice that we talked about. Third person plural is always a passive voice. Which they will spill it, or in other words, which will be shed, because there's no they. We don't know who the they is in this scenario. Right? Although we do know, but we don't know. Which will be shed. Kon evol means to be shed out or shed forth, or poured forth or spilled forth. Egen tino. So again, this is remember we talked about the upon in an active sense versus upon in a static sense. So gen versus he gen. So this is an active sense. So something of motion upon. So egentino, upon you. Remember we went through, let's see, I don't know if I have it here. But, let's see. Can't remember. I'm pretty sure we did this at some point, but let me see. Way back here. If I can find it. If not, it's okay. Yeah, I don't think we have it right here. It's fine. So remember, egen means upon. So to go through egoy, ego, egos, and it's not egoten. You have to have egen, and then okay. So here, what we're seeing here, egentino means upon you, plural. Or in other words, when it's going to be shed upon you, or basically it means on your behalf. It's kind of an idiomatic expression, or an idiom basically means when something literally means one thing, but it's kind of understood to mean something else. So will be shed, or they will, or in other words, they will spill it forth. They will spill it forth upon you. Or in other words, it will be shed for you. Nim. Han ke mish. So han is the plural indefinite article. Mish means many. It means many or a lot. So it means han ke mish. So it's going to be shed for you. Remember, it means other or also, right? It's not going to be also. So it's going to be shed for you and also han mish. So it's like you can take out the ke and also you han mish. So han mish means the many's is the best way to think of it. So the many's for you and for many also. In setif. So this is the conjunctive. So remember the conjunctive, it's basically like the present tense, but it basically continues. The same, it looks like the present tense, but it continues the same tense as the previous tense. You can understand that this incentive is almost like the future because this conjunctive. So you can think of it as and will be given, or will give him. And what's the him again? It's the blood or the cup, the blood. For, so will be given to koevul, the putting away, or in other words, the forgiveness. That's kind of to put away. That's an idiom for to forgive. So the putting away or forgiveness. Inte of ni novi, the sins. So will be given for the forgiveness or the putting away of the sins, or the remission of sins. Phi, this, it's the nearer demonstrative pronoun. So this, phi versus phi means near. So this, arit, remember we talked about the pre-nominal, or excuse me, pre-pronominal, because they're pronouns, so pre-pronominal form of the imperative, the command form of iri. So arit, so do him, or what's the him? It's basically, you know, to drink, do the drinking or tasting here. So do him, or basically do it. For pa, my, make the thought. So in other words, make the thought. So do this. So do this to remember me. Or in other words, do this in remembrance of me. Okay. And then we go on and we say, you know, we already had fai pechen on with me, but now we have fai onpe. So this also. So the near demonstrative. So this also is and on with me in a state or condition of being true. So we talked about that last time. So this also is, comma, in truth or truly. So truly this is. Amen. Amen. Remember, amen is from the Hebrew, so be it. And by the way, the Coptic equivalent of amen, about this last time, but amen, in Coptic, it's translated as es eshopi. So it means so be it, or this is the definitive future, or the third future, just depending on which textbook. Es eshopi means she shall happen, or in other words, so be it. And that's what amin means, so be it. So we always say, Je amin es eshopi. Remember I told you sometimes in Coptic, they'll repeat the different languages. They'll repeat the, you know, the Greek and the Coptic or something like that. And so you'll see that duplication. Well, when you hear amin es eshopi, it's basically saying amin and es eshopi is the same. So be it, so be it. Okay. So the next part, sop ghar mivan. Ghar, remember, it's the Greek particle meaning for. So for. So sop means occurrence. or instance. And even means every or all. So for every instance or every time, so for every time, this is the relative of the future. Titinna, third person, second person plural. So for every time that you will, uom is, means to eat. So for every time that you will eat, from in. So for every time that you will eat from, pi oik, this bread, phi. So this is the demonstrative just blinking I'm on the terminology here, but this is the demonstrative prefix here. So pi oik, so this bread, and then you have the demonstrative pronoun also. So again, it's like emphasizing. So I usually would translate this as every time you eat of this very bread, because how are you going to say this bread this? So I would usually just translate it this very bread. Owo and intitinsu. Remember, this is the conjunctive again. It doesn't have the future tense, but it's understood as the future tense because it's continuing the same flow or the same stream of thought from before. Owo intitina su. In Coptic, it's just not done that way. It's just owo intitinsu. So it looks like the present, but really it's the conjunctive because it has the ne in front of it. And it means it's going to continue the same tense, keep the continuity of this. So this is going to be the future tense. So when you translate it, it's going to be like the future tense. So for every time you'll eat of this very bread, and that's, and typically, if I recall correctly, I think the priest is pointing at it. So that's why he's saying, every time you'll eat of this very bread, and he points at the bread, and then drink of this very cup, and he's pointing at it. So that's why it's kind of being saying specifically, this one here that's on the altar right now. So this very one that's right here. And will drink from pi avot phi, this very cup. Same exact concept. This possessive adjective, not possessive adjective, maybe demonstrative adjective, I think is what it was called. The demonstrative adjective and then the demonstrative pronoun. So this cup, this. So this very cup. And that's what one is pointing at it at this point. And then we have got the present continuous. So he oish means to preach or proclaim. So present continuous, so preaching or proclaiming. So you are preaching or proclaiming. Because remember, when you have the present continuous, it's like adding ing to the verb. So the verb here is preach or proclaim. So it's preaching or proclaiming. So you are proclaiming. What are you proclaiming? Pa mu. Mu means dead. So pa mu means my dead or my death. So you are proclaiming my death. So ereten, again, the same present continuous. Ereten, remember is when we prefix that to certain nouns to turn the nouns into verbs. So this Greek noun, homologine, from meaning to confess. So to make confession, or in other words, you are confessing. What are you confessing? Again, the direct object here is shown here by this particle. Ne. Ta anastasis. So anastasis is a Greek word meaning resurrection. And again, most of the Greek nouns are going to be feminine when they're brought into a Coptic. Again, I don't know if they're feminine in Greek or not, but probably. But when they're brought into the Coptic, they're usually have the feminine articles. So ta anastasis. So ereten er. So ereten er homologin. So you are confessing ta anastasis, my resurrection. Okay. So let's go from the beginning. So for every time or every instance, every occurrence that you will eat from this very bread, while Abuna is pointing at, he says it, this very bread, and drink, again, this is the continuing it, and will drink, because it's, even though it's the conjunctive, it's the future, because it's continuing the previous part. So, and will drink from this very cup that Abuna is pointing at. You are preaching or proclaiming my death. You are confessing my resurrection. And you are ereten iri. You are doing my thought, or in other words, you are remembering me. Sha ti e. So sha means until. Oops. What happened here? Let's close this. Okay. Until te, until I come. So sha means until, and then this is the present tense, t, until I come. Okay. And then we have the hymn, Amin, 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 your death, O Lord. So again, this is all Greek here, so I'm not really going to go into that too much. But, I think it's probably a pretty good stopping point. So that's good for this lesson for today. So I think we'll conclude it there. If you have any questions or anything, please go ahead and send them in. And, otherwise, we'll conclude there for today. So let's finish up with our prayer here. And by the way, we're going to get to the prayer of Our Father while we're going through these translations. We're going to get to that here in the next few weeks. So, hopefully we already have most of this memorized. We've said it about, I don't know, 50 or 100 times, I don't know, during these lessons. So hopefully everyone's been saying it along, and we should have it memorized by now in Coptic. But we're going to go through the translation part by part here in the next few weeks. So again, thanks for your attention, and if you have any questions, let me or any of the administrators know, and we can pray together. خنبران انبيوت نمشيري نببنما ثواب ونوتي نوت أمين جيب نيوت تخني في قوي ما عرف توه ونجيب كران تيك متقورو فيت هناك ما عرف شوبي ام فريتي خانت فاه نام هي جنبي كاهي Pin oiken terasti, ni nanem fou, owo ka nietero non evil, eme friti hon, enten ko evil, en ni ete uun enton ero. Owo emper enten uun epirasmos, Allah nahmen evil hapi petho, han Christos, Isos ben choice, jetok te timet uru, nemtigom, nepeu, shanem teniene, tiro amin. هنبرانا من فيوت نمبشيري نمبرنمنا ثواب ونتنو Thank you very much, everybody, and I'll see you next time.